Peter, good to see you.
It's lovely to be here.
Handshake. So great to see you. So we're here at Community Shop in West Norwood. I think we have known each other for about 20 years. I remember you were kind enough to invite us to the Social Enterprise Awards at Lambeth Palace Gardens, which seems like a long time ago.
It was.
And I feel I had hair and it was dark. So we have been chatting about social enterprise for years. I think we have worked together in a sector that has been curious and tried and played with different ideas and pushed the boundaries a bit and sometimes failed, and just tried to keep open and honest dialogue about a world that we think that really matters. And I think we're going to try and do that a bit today. And just to keep it real, somebody else has set some questions for us. So I'm going to answer them.
Nothing too personal.
So this is interesting because I think there's probably, you're one of a handful of people that can genuinely take a view on this one, which is, how's the perception of social enterprise changed over recent years?
Well, I think it has. I mean, when I started my first social enterprise, I didn't even know the language of social enterprise, and people, tried to awkwardly fit me in between two camps, charity and business. And I think now it's in kind of, common parlance, right? People are using it. You can ask AI whether it's on the ascendancy or decline. And in terms of use in language, in terms of politics, in terms of journalism, it's on the up. And I think the perception question is really interesting. I can remember when it used to be synonymous with kind of enterprising charities. And now it's really seen as a distinct form of business. And that's where it needs to be. That's where it should have always been. And now it's attracting talent, clearly, from the commercial sector. Private business wants to participate. And it's not just about charities being enterprising. It's now about a whole way of doing business that meets the needs of communities, society, the planet in a fundamentally different way.
And from your perspective, in terms of that change, what do you think has kind of been the catalyst for that change? Because there must have been some things that you've seen over the last decade that have made you think that'll help change the view.
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of ways to answer that. So I think, first of all, we all recognise the kind of relationship now a bit clearer between business and what happens in the economy and what happens in society and what happens to the environment. And previously it was okay for businesses just to get on and pay their taxes and the government would sort out the problems. The world's much more complex, needs much more kind of complex and elegant solutions. And I think that's what you're clearly delivering. And then I think also, unfortunately, the world has become a more challenging place to be for ordinary people. Work insecurity, housing insecurity, food insecurity, energy insecurity. And all of those challenges, which are real challenges in people's lives, requires creative solutions. And it can't just be more advice centres, because advice only gets you so far. So these sorts of interventions that you're doing here with Community Shop, I think are just, unfortunately, much more needed than they've ever been needed before. And the creativity and the way in which you bring this to life is quite unique and is also needed much more than it's ever been needed before. And I think more and more people, can I also say this to you, are infected by the bug of social enterprise. Your advocacy of how this model works for you and for the community around you is infectious. And you are a great ambassador, not only for Community Shop, but also for the whole sector.
Yeah. That's really kind, thank you. And I agree with that, by the way. I think that I have always passionately believed since I kind of happened upon this set. We all know you just kind of, you're doing some other stuff and then all of a sudden you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that seems to give a name to something within me which has been forming. Yeah. And now that kind of frames up what I want to do and what I feel my mission is. And I think for me, that has always been twofold. It's how do you deliver something which is sustainable at a community level so that you can be dead honest with the community that you serve as your customers. And at the same time, how can that thing which you are doing become infectious to the world around you? And so I think that's really interesting. I also have a feeling, because you said, it's more needed now. I I wonder if in the history of business models in the UK and abroad, what we've seen is a rise in interest in social enterprising models at certain points in history when their time is come.
Well, if we go back to the kind of the Rochdale pioneers, right? But you're part of the world.
On Toad Lane. Is that right? On Toad Lane, the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers.
Well, you know it probably better than I do myself. But even before the co-op, you know, Robbie Owen up in Scotland was developing communities of cooperation based on very similar kind of themes. And it does tend to be when there are huge challenges, either natural disaster, man-made like war, or when there's kind of economic squeeze. And I think it does create an element of innovation. And so you see people searching for new solutions and building on the legacies that previous generations have also created and being informed by them. So you know, when times get tough, social entrepreneurs find themselves in just the best climate, but also, you know, the worst of times too. You don't want to see that need, but it does, you know, create an opportunity for you to find elegant solutions that fit that time and circumstance.
Agreed. So we'll move on to the next question. I think it's yours.
I get a go, do I?
Look.
Oh, look at that. Thank you for the promotion. What benefits do you believe social enterprise can have on businesses?
Let's have a quick go at that one. Then you can jump in. You know this one well. So I will always speak to that from the experience of the last kind of 12 years, which is, you know, we're sat in a building today, which is one of 14 community shops, which ended up being a bit of a spin out from a 50-year-old commercial business, but not really a spin out because we stayed part of that group. And I often think, look, I love that we've been able to use what you call elegant, I think, thoughtful, enterprising ways of thinking and doing to join hands with our communities and offer what we hope is a great kind of service. But at the same time as doing that, I think two things happened. We transformed what could have easily been just a CSR project into a standalone business that had its own board and its own auditors and its own set of accounts and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it started to infect the culture of the ecosystem around it. It started to, and I think that was both ways. So we benefited from the toughness and the challenge and the keeping us honest of, you know, management accounts that came out every Monday morning and we saw really how we were doing it. So I think, you know, in our case, that was shown, first of all, because we're dead proud of the, you know, the stuff we've done through these 14 stores, and we're opening a couple each year, working with 70,000 people. And I think you mentioned the word elegant, trying to co-create an elegant reinvention of community retail in partnership with our communities. I'm really proud of that. But I think I'm equally proud of what has happened when you allow a social enterprise culture to sit in the heart of a 50-year-old business, and how you both changed by that. So, you know, we keep ourselves more honest. We've got rigor in so many things that we do as a business, and we've learned a lot from that, and certainly learned more than when I was doing social enterprise on my own 20 years ago. It has been an academy for me in how you do good business. But I think for the wider group business, it has infected that wider ecosystem, right the way down to the way we decorate our head office and the way we talk about what we do and the language we use. So I think there are two perspectives on this. I think the first of all, the first bit about the advantage of social enterprise, if you're doing the kind of stuff like we're doing, which is complicated, and I think it does take a lot of thinking through, and I think it takes a real enterprising and sometimes quite determined spirit. But I think it does really transform the business. I think it gives colleagues a sense of purpose and pride because they can see a tangible thing happening which they all contribute to. Whether you're in a finance team, an HR team, an IT team, and you're on a packing line, you are all contributing to the work that your social enterprise does. And I think also it gives you a distinct advantage particularly if you can work with clients across the corporate world that understand the power of social enterprise. They can look at you as a business and go, yeah, I like the way that works. I'll do business with you. But I guess also there's another spin on that question in terms of the advantage that social enterprises can bring to business in terms of procurement. And I know that's something that you've been doing a lot about at Social Enterprise UK.
Yeah, well, procurement is a big prize in this country. Public sector procurement, 400 billion. FTSE 100, top 100 businesses are going to have a combined kind of procurement spend in the tens of billions, if not more. So it's a big sum we're talking about here, much more than CSR is ever going to be. And that's why procurement is so critically important. And it also, I think, rewards businesses for doing the right thing. And that's what I want to see. We've heard so much about a race to the bottom in terms of reducing salaries and workers' terms and conditions. Actually, social enterprise is about creating a race to the top. Who can be the best for communities? Who can be the best for workers? Who can be the best for suppliers, producers, the planet? And actually, it's an exciting race to be in. Now, it's not all bees and honey. There are some big challenges in running a business like that, and we know that margins can be incredibly tight when you're trying to do so much. But the opportunity to make a positive contribution to the world, don't underestimate the impact that can have on customer loyalty, the way that suppliers want to work with you. When you're in a bit of difficulty, as all businesses might find themselves in, the way that your partners can rally around you. You know, there's so much goodwill when people know that you're working for a benefit that is bigger than your own. And I think it just creates the very, very best in people. It creates the best in business. And actually, the legacy of these businesses, as you can see here, is actually phenomenal and really moving.
Brilliant. And we're going to go on to the next question. I looked over there, didn't I? Shouldn't look over there. But broke the fourth wall. My God! Broke the fourth wall. I think the next question is you up, and neither of us know what it is. So let's
Okay. I get two on the trot, do I? Okay. How do you think social enterprises have contributed to positive social impact in the last decade?
You start.
Okay.
I mean, literally, we didn't know these questions, did we? Okay. We genuinely didn't. So when I say you start, it means I'm not so sure about it. You kick off.
I'm happy to. One of the things that's missed out when we talk about social enterprises and their impact, because everybody is getting better at reporting, monitoring, and promoting their own impact, is the impact they have on a new generation of entrepreneurs, a new generation of existing businesses, or the existing corporate culture and mentality. The conventions about how we do business are being broken down and reimagined through social enterprise. So yes, collectively, there are more than ever, employing nearly 2 million people now. It's an incredible statistic. But the one thing that we sometimes forget is the influence they have, the soft power of just by being courageous and doing things differently. And when people do things differently, they break new ground. It allows people to reassess the risk that they thought might exist in doing what's right, and actually makes it a safer route for others to follow. So I think we are pioneers, and I think we kick down and overcome challenges and obstacles. And in doing so, we allow others to follow in our wake. And I think that's what you are doing here. And you won't just have an impact on the lives you touch through this store or on Company Shop, but actually, I think on the whole of retail. And I'm not overestimating that. I think it's evident.
And I hope I agree with you, because I think that's part of it. I think you're always, or I think for us, we're always trying to do a tangible thing, just get on with doing a decent job, turn up every day and deliver a brilliant service. But at the same time, you're storytelling. You're trying to paint pictures and craft narratives that other people might look at and go, that's a really good idea. So, just at the moment, we're asking ourselves, when we started 11 years ago, we coined the phrase social supermarket as a way to try and be a response to food insecurity that put dignity, human agency, and entrepreneurship at the heart of a sustainable model. And I think what we were also trying to do is, without any sense of a kind of negativity, ask the question, are we going to succeed in the fight against the issue of food insecurity, if we just have one predominant model in the UK and we call it food banks. And I think the beauty of social enterprise is it's very good at doing loads of different things as a way of trying to look at the same problem and then learn from each other. So I think the first thing that we were trying to do is shift the trajectory of the way we think about food insecurity in the UK by coming up with a slightly different model and demonstrating that there is a way to embed yourself in partnership with the community for a decade and see what happens when you work in a transformative relationship. I've started to ask the question in the last year, is that just about being a social enterprise, or is it about redefining community retail? Because at the same time, we're employing and upskilling brilliant people. We're creating job opportunities for 2,500 people last year through our employment academy. We're reusing public buildings that were dying on high streets and estates. So I started to think much more that some of the impacts aren't even the ones that we thought about 10 years ago.
I mean, just the impact on even your customers coming into the store. Once they get to know and they're familiar with the model, you could be inspiring a whole generation of new social entrepreneurs with every touch point that you have with them, giving them the courage and the dignity to live their lives proudly and to build their own agency and community along the way. It's not just about getting some discounted food, right? It's much more than that. And I think, goodness knows how many ripples this business model creates across the whole community.
I think social enterprises are consummate sharers. I think genuinely, we want to be good. I think we're often bold and loud. Yeah. Hands up, I think I am sometimes. But I think we are consummate sharers. I think over the last decade, I must have hosted visits at least once or twice a week from other people who were interested in doing something similar without any intention of us doing a thing in the place that they called home, but just sharing the stuff that we'd learned so that they can do it. We're sat here in West Norwood, and I know the guy who used to be our store manager has gone back home to South Africa and asked before he went for all the business plans and all the stuff that we learned, because he'd like to recreate something similar. So I think we are consummate sharers, because at the end of the day, we are the vanguard of a movement. And I think you can't be a movement if you're not prepared to hold hands.
It has to be inclusive, right? And it is a movement, and I like that language very, very much.
We're going to move on.
We are.
Because otherwise, we're never going to get out of here. The next question. So, Peter, tell us about the time in your life when you had your light bulb moment about social enterprise.
Oh, gosh, there's been a few. Right at this outset, I'd worked in originally, actually retail, Marks and Sparks, Body Shop.
Big up for the retailers.
DIY stores.
Other retailers are available.
Not that you'd know. And I found that an absolutely brilliant kind of baptism into work. And it built my confidence just by being on the shop floor, having to engage with customers. And then I actually did move to the charity sector. And I was frustrated, if I'm honest, by some of the lack of entrepreneurship that and the culture that I saw there. And so there was a light bulb moment for me, because I didn't even know about social enterprise at that point, about putting the two together and what if. And I used to spend evenings imagining what if different types of business were a bit more like a charity, or if charities were a bit more like a business. And so the light bulb moment gave me the confidence to start a social enterprise back in like 2000.
Oh, you're really old, aren't you?
Well, I am now. But I was still younger in your company for some reason. So that was a light bulb moment for me. And then I think I felt as if I was probably overstating the case for social enterprise. People said, oh, there he is, always talk about social enterprise. I said, social enterprise is the solution for everything. Mm-hmm. And then I met a guy called Mohammed Yunus, right? And Mohammed Yunus, for those that might not know, is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He came to the UK about 15 months ago when he was facing imprisonment in Bangladesh at the age of 85. And he's now basically the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And he said to me, there is not a single problem I have ever experienced in the world in my lifetime where social enterprise was not the solution. And that was also a light bulb moment. I've spoken to him recently about the challenge he's facing in Bangladesh, and he still believes in that same mantra. There is a social enterprise solution for any problem we face. And actually, the more I think about it, the more confident I am to say that. It's a big claim, it's a bold claim, and I'm sure people are already thinking of problems that it might not solve. But actually, he is dealing with a very, very complex set of challenges in Bangladesh right now. And he's applying social enterprise thinking, not only to business, but to a whole kind of economic model. And I think that was another light bulb moment. It was like, yeah, you can be courageous. You can state what you believe, and don't try and shy away from thinking that social enterprise has the potential to be as big as you do just because some people disagree with you. And Eunice has given me that confidence. That was another light bulb moment and an opportunity to name drop.
A massive, and for anybody watching this who hasn't read his books or gone on to YouTube and looked at Mohammed Yunus's stuff, he's just, I think, a global leader, grandfather, whatever the figure is of this movement that we, that we're a part of. And I think, I think it is right to make bold claims. But you said there, Peter, about something to do with it being a mindset, and I think that is just a really important thing, because I hope that in our movement and in the wider kind of socio-political economic framework that we're all part of, we've moved away possibly a bit from that purist view that it is just about legal models, rather than it about being a mindset to the way you do stuff, the way you balance up that. How do we trade for people, planet and profit? How do you understand people to be about individuals and communities and all that stuff? And I think, for me, the light bulb moment was really similar. I'd been lucky enough to become the chief executive of a charity that I loved. And we'd done some amazing stuff. And we'd developed some real relationships of trust with the beneficiaries that we were working with, which were often people who spent a lot of their life on the streets. And after 2 years of building an amazing project that we were doing, I had to be the one that said, we're going to stop doing this now, lads. Because I've had to let the colleagues go because the funder's not going to fund it anymore. And it was that moment that I said, I don't ever want to be the one that does that anymore. And secondly, actually, that also brought the feeling that said, I also don't want to be the one sat in my office realising that I spend at least 50% of my staff time writing reports on outcomes for people who've given us money. Because at the moment, we work with a massive stakeholder network, both internally, Community Shop, Company Shop Group, and now we're part of the wider Biffa family, and externally with policymakers and all sorts of stuff. But we are ultimately accountable only to those members who come in and shop with us. And therefore you can be really honest. So I think my light bulb moment was the genuine pain of looking at somebody who you'd worked with and said, we can't do that thing anymore because the funding's run out.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if there's a way that we didn't have to say that again. I wonder if there's a way that we could continue to stick in to those relationships in the long term, because we could generate a little bit of revenue through the sale of a product or a service. And I was asking that question whilst in the kitchen at that same charity, making some sandwiches with somebody who happened to be the director of people and culture at a major supermarket, and somebody else who happened to be a fairly passionate entrepreneur. And literally those people went, yeah, I think there is a way, possibly. And like you, it must have been 3 years later that I heard the term social enterprise. I didn't know it was that thing. It was just, I think there must be a different way to do this stuff. And, it's what leads us here, isn't it? And so many other people who've explored that journey.
I think we all know how hard the last, decade and a half, 15, 16 years have been, economically, politically, all sorts of stuff has been going on. And yet this movement, and it is a movement, just continues to recruit and grow. It just won't give up, and neither should it. But it keeps on attracting more and more quality, more and more talent, bigger ambition, bigger ideas. And I think, as I've said it before, and I'll say it again, these models have something really significant to offer a very, very complex and uncertain future. Yeah. And I think for business, I think there's an inevitability that more and more businesses are going to become more and more like social enterprises.
And I remember we were talking about this downstairs, and we were told when we were filming this that we should not say, as I said earlier. So I'm going to break the camera. I'm really sorry about that. I said earlier, but we were wandering around downstairs, and I said, I can't even remember. You might remember. We were at the Lambeth Palace Gardens, and Nick Hurd was presenting some awards. And I remember you saying, haven't we done good? Haven't we done good as social enterprises to celebrate all these lovely things that we've been doing this last year? But wouldn't it be good to come back in a couple of decades and say, isn't it really interesting now that there aren't any businesses left that are not trading for people, planet and profit? And I suppose I kind of felt that rallying call then because it was a bit younger and more urgent. Now I think it's even more necessary that we do that message.
Absolutely.
We're going to ask another question. This is interesting. So, and I think you've got some views on this. What's the best way for a private sector organisation or an individual to start their transition into a social enterprise model? You might want to answer the question, but what's the best way for a business or private sector organisation to do that?
Well, I think like any kind of decision in a business, you need to kick it around a bit. You need to take on multiple views from different sides, and you need to, kind of provoke and assess and scrutinise, everything basically, because to make such a decision, it's a big decision and it is worthy of the kind of mental investment to understand what you're getting into. I think too often people think, oh, wouldn't it be great? And kind of jump into it. And then they go, what do you mean you can't distribute, more than however percentage of profits? And what do you mean, you can't raise capital investment quite as easily, perhaps? So I think just be aware of the pros and cons, and everything in life has both pros and cons. And really, go and see what it's like in real life, not just what you've read on someone else's website or pamphlet, and really interrogate what the opportunities and the costs are going to be. Because it's no bed of roses. It's really hard. It's hard to run a business, right? It's hard to run a business in the UK. To run a social business when you've got to also manage all of the additional outcomes, and it's not for the faint-hearted, but it is for the brave and courageous, I think. And if you've got a can-do entrepreneurial attitude, then off you go. If you've got a more cautious kind of nature, then do your research. Be certain that is the right thing for you to do at that time. And if it's not, it doesn't mean it will never be. Come back to it and look again, and always be willing to kind of adapt and evolve. Real life is messy and complex, and you might make decisions that you're going to have to reverse out of. It's okay. It's all part of the journey, right? And it's the journey that should be enjoyable, not just achieving the outcome.
And I think you're absolutely right. It's, I think we found over the last 11, 12 years, I would say that the prerequisites are exactly what you've said. So I think if you're going to I suppose I'd probably want to say, just don't face into the question about, do we want to be a social enterprise is the first thing. The first thing is try and create a part of your business, either as a small group of individuals or as a bigger business, that you call, I don't know, just call it a social innovation hub or something. Yeah. Just create a space that gives permission for people to think differently.
To be socially enterprising. And that's the difference between the noun and the verb, right? Because to be socially enterprising, anyone can be socially enterprising. To be a social enterprise is sometimes used, as you say, in terms of legal structural models. Forget that. See what it's like to play in the space of being socially enterprising, or partner with someone that is also doing it, and see how that rubs on you. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Just get in there, get your hands dirty. Everybody has the opportunity to do more.
And I think when I think about lots of organisations that we've worked alongside, but also, our own experience, yes, Community Shop is a social enterprise. It's a community interest company, part of the Community Shop group. Just as powerful are what I think you'd call the social entrepreneurs. Yep. So those internal entrepreneurs who work in the wider group who use that socially enterprising culture to do amazing stuff as part of the wider group. The other three things I'd say that you probably need is try and find a couple of people who are kind of brave enough to ask the tough questions. Because if you make it a project that is just for a group of interested parties who can't influence the mechanics of how the business works, you might get a different outcome. And then the thing that we did right at the start of our journey here is ask the question about 3 C's. Does this business have the capability, the culture, and the capacity to do the good thing that we want to do? We didn't say, shall we start a social enterprise? We said, we want to do something about food insecurity. Do we, as a group of people that we happen to call a business, have the culture, the capability, and the capacity? And if we don't, can we find it?
Yeah.
Because if we can find it, then we might be able to create that space, and then something might happen. So I think it is much more about creating the space to give permission for socially enterprising thinking to be valued, and then a thing might happen. Yep. And in a sense, you don't want to predestine what that thing is.
I also think getting social entrepreneurs to come into corporate businesses is also a wonderful way to get fresh eyes on a problem and to stimulate the conversation about creativity. And doing what's right doesn't always cost more. Sometimes it does, and we need to be honest about that. But you can go into a business and you can see waste. And you know what waste is? Waste is money out the door, right? So if you can reduce waste, whether that's the waste of people leaving your business too soon, and therefore you're absorbing the cost of more and more recruitment and training, if you can take a dispassionate look at where there are opportunities to gain efficiency in a business, you're probably, in the process of doing that, also be doing right by your people, your community, and by the planet too. So yeah, it's not always in opposition. Sometimes you can find an even sweeter spot by being enterprising.
And I think you're right. I think social entrepreneurs have often bootstrapped stuff.
Yeah.
And they've treated everything as if it's their own business and their own destiny with all of the heart in it. We've built a business here that has 14 stores, 160 colleagues serving, 70,000 people. And all of that has been built on stuff that people used to pay other people to take away. Yeah. And we said, if you just don't frame it as waste, just frame it as, in fact, stop talking about it as waste. Say, how can I find a secondary market for this amazing stuff? Then you can create an inevitable different outcome. And I think if you bang those social entrepreneurs, even into some really large businesses, they might come up with some really great ideas that save you a bit of money.
And the other observation that I've got about your business here, which it might not come across on camera, because, it's us two, is the strength of the culture here, right? Which is phenomenal. Like, you can see the motivation of people that you meet. You can see the pride. You can see that this is a major part of their lives. It's not just work. It's much more than work.
And I think they are. And interestingly, the more we do stuff and the longer we do stuff, I hope that this is true everywhere. I do different things, but I do less on a day-to-day basis, because I think what we've created is a network of social entrepreneurs who are very happy to challenge us as a business when they don't feel that we're quite getting it right.
If they should.
That's what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. How can one convince their team and stakeholders to come with them on that journey?
Well, I'll kick off and then you think about it, because you have certainly been networked with way more social enterprises. Yeah. I think for me, it was 3 things. I think the first, it was about genuinely inviting people to reflect on what the world of business will look like in a decade in terms of creating shared value, ESG, CSR, whatever phrase in 10 years' time will demonstrate how we have to stand up and talk about the impact we have in communities and society and the planet, living within planetary bounds, all that type of stuff. So the first thing was asking people, what do we imagine that the world will be like in business in 10 years' time? And would it be a good idea if we were ready for that now, even if our competition are only ready for that in 8 years? Wouldn't it be good if we were ready for that new world now? That was the first thing. That's not to say it is about giving a business advantage. It's about saying, don't allow it to be a business advantage and you missed out.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is, if you are going to recruit talent, the talented people who are going to be drawn to drive this business forward in the future, both our commercial and our social business, will increasingly only come somewhere where they believe in what we're doing. So if you are going to be able to recruit talent, and we talk about, and we shared a little bit today as been walking around stuff, I believe that we are able to recruit amazingly talented people because we try to pay good wages, we try to have good terms and conditions, but because people truly believe in what they're doing. And I think that's important in terms of talent retention and recruitment. And I think the third is, and this is a more nuanced conversation, but it is about business value. It's about how do you lock in value, genuine value that external stakeholders and future investors will look at. Now, I think all of those are three business arguments. Yeah. And I think none of the arguments that I have used internally have been about playing to any sense of altruism, frankly, because I just take that as read. Because I just take as read that if people have the opportunity to do good, most people will choose to do that. So I don't feel that I need to persuade people, wouldn't it be good to do? But so those would be my arguments. What about you? Because you've worked with, literally thousands of social enterprises, big and small, across the UK.
I think for some stakeholders, there is a fear about, if we're going to do more, what am I going to lose, or what are we going to lose? And people are living in difficult circumstances where not everyone has more to give, right? Whether that's time or money or whatever it might be. So I think overcoming that kind of stigma, and I've seen kind of an evolution take place actually, but I think convincing partners that this isn't going to come at some significant financial cost or some sort of diversion for them. This is going to complement what they're already doing. This is going to enable them to tell a better story to their stakeholders, and that this is done in the spirit of collaboration. It's not just a transactional sort of deal. You move into the sorts of old-fashioned relational kind of arrangements with suppliers, producers, stakeholders that might have become, less common these days, right?
Absolutely true.
And I think, when I worked at M&S all those years ago, they had relationships with suppliers that had run for 30, 40 years.
And were genuine relationships.
Genuine partnerships.
Trust.
And it wasn't transactional. They were there for the long haul. And there was an element of co-production and recognising that co-dependency as well. And I think social enterprise is kind of bringing that back a bit, actually. Your business exists not only because of the long-term relationships you build with the people that provide your product, but also with your customers too.
100%.
Right? And you can see you've got a relationship with each and every one of them almost,
And I haven't, but you're absolutely right. The teams do, and it's why I think earlier on I talked about, I stand sometimes in the stores and I think, there was a reason that the Romans said of us that we were a nation of shopkeepers. It was about the way in which the business that we call retail was an anchor institution that built bonds of social fabric. And I think that's what we're going to do. What we acknowledge is sometimes there's a cost to that. You spend a bit more time on the shop floor, you make a meal, you do all that kind of stuff. But I think that when you bake that in, it brings loyalty. And I think people look at that and go, from other businesses and other sectors, well, I might not be able to do all of it, but there's something in that. Yeah. And I think that's really important. And I think you point out, we often forget that you can read the word social in all sorts of different ways.
Oh, yes.
But that word about the bonds which tie us together creates a real sense of interdependency in the network which we are. Well,
it's definitely your turn now.
Is it me?
I think so.
It is. So what are the best practices, good practices, things that you've seen that have been, I love your word, elegant practices that people can employ to maintain a model of social enterprise that can go the long term?
I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned is you can't find a model that works and then stick with it. Mm-hmm. Because either you continue to evolve and change, or you'll find that the world changes and evolves around you and you're left behind. So given the fact that we are in a constant state of flux, you've got to continue to review, revise, rethink your businesses and be open to new innovations and new ideas from the community, from your staff, from everybody. Just because you've cracked a model in this here and now doesn't mean that business model is still going to function as it does in the here and now in another 5 years' time. And I've heard that some businesses are rewriting their strategies every 6 months at the moment because the world is so unpredictable and so uncertain. And I just think that we've seen this in the charity sector. Sometimes charities get a bit tired. Businesses can't afford to ever be complacent, and that's certainly true for social businesses. So expect the world to change and prepare for that constant evolution and adaptation and growth, actually. You want to, there's big markets out there, there's big opportunities, huge problems to solve. So if you've got an appetite for growth, don't fear it, keep on growing, because that is one of the ways in which you build kind of resilience and awareness, and you can grow your impact, of course. So I think, just keep on moving, keep on growing as you clearly are. There's no sign of you slowing down just yet.
And we've done that stuff. I think we've tried to learn that lesson that you said. I think there are three bits, I think, for me. I think the first is people. So we've tried our best as soon as we could to invest in really good people. So if you want a head of community retail, get the best retailer you can find. If you want a head of impact, get a clinical psychologist who really knows what they do. Get the best people you can find. And certainly for me, definitely people who are better than you at doing all of those bits.
Where would we be without them, right?
Really. But really invest in them, give them space, allow them to take responsibility and grow that business. I think the second for me is about that constant innovation. So one of the things that I learned, and it was a tough lesson really, was that there's this kind of sigmoid curve where every enterprise idea, movement, whatever it is, it starts off and goes down a bit because it's really hard. And then it starts to go up a bit. And then it plateaus off. And then it inevitably has a bit of entropy and runs out. Mm-hmm. And in my previous life, that's where I tried to innovate. Okay. And I should have done it there. I should have done it at the point where we still had the energy. So the number of times over the last few years when everything's been going really well, that I've said to the team, now's the time we change it up. And people would say, but it's all going brilliant.
Yep.
But I go, but it won't do forever.
No.
So that thing that we're doing in the store or the hub or the kitchen, shall we get a van and call it Community Shop on the go and do a lot of pop-ups? Do you know what I mean? That we do it when it's all going great and you've got some organisational strength to be able to do it. So the first is the people. The second is that point on the curve that it's right to innovate, because if not, you miss the chance and then things go really, really hard. And then I think the third thing for me has always been just keep banging on about what the core mission is. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to interfere too much in the details of how we do it. But Community Shop exists to build strong individuals and confident communities. We never said in our mission statement that we existed to sell cheap food. That is just a means.
Yep.
We exist to build strong individuals and confident communities. So if somebody can come forward and say, tell you where we could do that, just keep saying that bit. And and then you can innovate. I think you said it, and we always try to say we are in such a changing world that I think our strategic goals are definitely written in pen, but all the rest of it we write in pencil. And sometimes we rub it out and we go a different way to try and get there. So I think that's important. You're up, Peter. Oh no, did you do the last one?
No, you did the last one. Here we go. Oh, this is a nice broad one. What do you believe is the future for social enterprise in the UK?
So we're doing a thing that is around co-creating with communities, a response to food insecurity for the 9.7 million families who experience food insecurity, not a small number, that's based on dignity, agency, and enterprise and community solutions. We are supposed to say, when somebody says, what's the future? Or I was taught when I was in the voluntary sector decades ago, well, we don't want to be here forever because we want to see the problem that we were set up overcome so that we will pack up and we don't need to be here anymore. But you see, I don't think we're based on a problem. I think we were a response to assets. We were a response to capability, and we were a response to strength. So absolutely in our regard, and I'm sure in other regards for other social enterprises, I don't want us to exist because we need to solve a problem. I want us to exist because the entrepreneurial momentum of bringing people together around a particular way of living and working together to face into doing things that play to society's best self and creating solutions. Yep. I want that to become the norm of the way all business does itself.
Very, very good. Yeah, I mean, I think social enterprise has a lot to offer in lots of different markets. I think one of the things that I've just been with one of our members this morning, actually. He delivers kind of health and social care and leisure services. And it made me reflect on the very, very difficult environment and the assumed increasing difficult environment for public services. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of under attack from kind of both sides, right? You've got an increasing quite extractive business models, often foreign owned coming in, private equity backed sort of stuff. Delivering public services and at the same time extracting value. Children's residential care is in a terrible mess at the moment. The most vulnerable citizens in our nation are getting unacceptable levels of care at prices that local authorities can't afford. You've got a brilliant opportunity for social enterprise to come into that market. Primary care services, GP services, increasingly dominated by US-backed, private equity-funded, kind of huge scale, predatory practices coming in. Again, social enterprise there. And if you see the state of the nation's finances and the pressures on quality of life and cost of living and the assumptions that we're making about the trends there, I think social enterprise is going to have a much more profound role in everybody's life, right? And I think that's also true for just about kind of any area, like New York taxis, the yellow taxis, they're a cooperative. That was done around getting the drivers together to have a bit more agency because there was a lack of kind of union representation. The people that make the cookies in Ben & Jerry's, cookie dough dynamo, ice cream, Greystone Bakery, it's a social business. You are seeing, Ethiopia's ambulance service is delivered by a social enterprise. Really, wherever you see people trying to solve problems, they are finding social enterprise is that kind of elegant, kind of quiet revolution that doesn't, doesn't need an overthrow of the status quo or anything, but it works alongside, it innovates, improves, and it's that kind of commitment to constant improvement that social enterprises are achieving, and no better example than yours, that gives me faith in the future.
And I think, I often think you talk about a revolution, and I'm all right with that.
Evolution, not revolution.
But I think there's this idea that, and I've seen this over and over again in so many different sectors, that sometimes are a bit surprising that we have inherited business models and we have emerging business models. On most occasions, the emerging is happening in the inherited. Yeah. So sometimes it'll displace it, sometimes it'll change it, But it isn't happening over here. It's happening in the business model. And I wonder if it's happening in economics. I wonder if social enterprise is trying to reshape the way we understand a perpetual cycle of GDP growth economics.
I think you're right. And the industry that I would say take a look at, because it's a surprising one, is tech. You know, we've got these big kind of names now in tech that have built these big businesses, and people are looking at them thinking, are these people, you know, actually working in our collective interests? So what you've now got in the tech sector are some really high quality emerging social businesses. So a search engine called Ecosia, every time you click you plant trees. They've done 100 million trees so far, and it's really, really growing that kind of sense of movement as well. Signal, like, you know, a messaging service, which doesn't harvest your data, which means that your data is secure. It's not that they just won't pass it on to third parties. They don't collect it in the first place, giving you that assurance. And I think in an age where what's true and what's not true is harder and harder to kind of work out, you've got, you know, things like Wikipedia, right, that emerged with the intention of having that kind of ethical, moral commitment at its heart, not being able to be bought and sold, to provide the world with kind of reliable knowledge. And I think these models are going to become more and more evident and valuable to society as society continues to be challenged by all of the things that it is. It's the last one.
I know it's the last one, and
much to your viewers' relief, I suspect.
Just before we do this last one, I want to thank you, Peter. I know that we probably didn't capture on camera, but you arrived on your bike, and it is a boiling hot day today. If you're watching this and it's a freezing cold day, I just promise you, here in West Norwood today, it is roasting, and this man arrived on his bike fanning himself. But I also want to thank you for the support that you've given to us. We've been knocking about now for 10 or 11 years. We are unbelievably proud to be a social enterprise. We deliberately chose that title when we started because we wanted to demonstrate to the food system that it is possible to do a thing which they see and understand as real business, but which reinvests every penny of its profits in delivering personal development programs and feeding kids for free and running a kitchen, all the kind of stuff. We were proud that we were around at a time that using the word social enterprise was a shorthand that people got for doing that thing. So we've been real, and for your personal advocacy for the sector and for spending a bit of time chatting around the fireside, which is actually an IKEA table.
Oh, well, who would know it?
If we do it again in the winter, it'll definitely be a fireside. Couldn't be today. Can
I just kind of give you a couple of reflections? So first of all, it is the greatest privilege in, you know, my life really to be given the license to go out and see this sort of stuff. I mean, can you imagine how in a world that sometimes can feel overwhelmingly filled with bad news, to go and meet people like you, thankfully not every day, but you know, there's only so much energy
There's so much you can take.
But honestly, it gives you, it's so good for your mental health to be in this sector. It's such a privilege to be able to articulate the ambitions, the values, the principles that drive it. And there is nothing better than to come out and, you know, get that kind of infection from you. You've re-energized me for the rest of the week and month, let me assure you. Coming here has been, I said I got tingles down my neck earlier.
Stairs, yeah.
And I did. And after 15 years in the job, that's pretty special.
We're going to have to wrap up in a minute because for two reasons. I know it's been great. It's been really just interesting to chew ideas around. Yes, we've had some questions, but the rest wasn't scripted. It is just genuinely what came off the top of our heads, and we've done it for a while now. And so we're going to finish with why. So why do you think more and more businesses are starting to genuinely think about choosing social enterprise models?
To put it simply, I think social enterprise is better for everyone, right? It's better for communities, it's better for the planet, it's better for staff, it's better for everyone. And people are waking up to that actually creating shared value is an incredible privilege. And actually it can make you sleep well at night. It can make you feel proud of your work, your contribution. People that sometimes, you know, work in jobs where there's not a clear purpose, you know, don't have that pride that your team clearly do here, right? They're not just working in a social supermarket. They're working in the community, changing lives every single day and hour that they are here. And that is so evident in the atmosphere. You got to come and check out this atmosphere and this culture. It is breathtaking. Congratulations.
Come anywhere you want to, from Liverpool to Grimsby and Scarborough, here at West Norwood, or anywhere else in between. And I think, I mean, you mentioned, and I think it's really interesting, I'm sure lots of people watching this because the kind of quite an educated audience, but I often thought this, and I thought this when we kicked off, when I worked in a charity, when I kicked off the first social enterprise in catering, when we've done this now, I used to think about that evolution that got to the point that you said about creating shared value, which I always thought was kind of Victorian philanthropy was sometimes could be a little bit, in my factory, I'm going to make money however I want, but I'm definitely going to build a school and an institute, so don't ask me any questions.
Yeah.
And then CSR came along and started to say, well, I think we're going to do is create an internal police force that's going to prevent everybody from doing really bad stuff. And then we got to this thought about creating shared value, CSV, which is, what if we wired the business up right so that the more money we made, intrinsically, the more environmental and social value we did? Why wouldn't everybody want to do that? No. Great movement for all of us. Peter, thank you. Thanks to everybody for looking at this. And thanks to those who are now going to serve a great basket of goods to Peter downstairs. Right. Cheers, pal. Thank you.